got it on.
Testing, all right. Let me say, can I have your attention for a minute? Those of you who are taking pictures, you'll have a chance later. Would you please remove from the platform so we got something we're going to do real quickly. You take a seat. We're fortunate to have outstanding. We're fortunate. Give me some more mic, please. We're fortunate to have an outstanding group of leaders with us this day, and we're excited about it. We want to move fast. But one of them, Senator Bernie Sanders, has to leave, and he wants to say something to us, and so we want to adjust our agenda now to give him a chance to say something. So let's welcome Bernie Sanders.
Thank you, and I'll be very, very brief, and it's a delight to be here with my fellow members of Congress and everybody else, Jesse and everybody else. I just want to say this. We all know that we are living in difficult times with perhaps the worst president in the history of our country. And there are a lot of things that one can say about Mr. Trump and what he is doing to this country, but this is, in my view, what the worst thing is. The worst thing that he is doing is trying to divide this great country up based on the color of our skin or the country that we came from or our religion or our sexual orientation. And we need at every level, and certainly within the religious community, to tell Mr. Trump that this country has suffered for hundreds of years from discrimination, from racism, from bigotry, from religious intolerance. And people have stood up and fought back, and we have made progress. And in fact, the younger generation today is the least racist, least sexist generation in the history of this country. So my message to Trump, and I know I speak for all of you, is, Mr. Trump, we are not going backwards toward bigotry. We're going forward for justice. Thank you all very much.
You know, we are screening. We still have people outside can't get in, but we're honoring the reservations until 12:30. And so at that point, there'll be some adjustments. And so I want to thank you for all that you're doing by being here today, and we look forward to a great luncheon. We're going to start because we know we have a lot. Let me begin by welcoming you to this annual luncheon in honor and memory of a great civil rights voice and leader and pastor in this city and in the country, in the person of the Reverend Dr. William Augustus Jones. Let's celebrate his legacy. We have had an extraordinary convention already. It is at the heights of impact. The National Action Network is at its very peak of influence in the nation. We're happy to report that we have over 106 chapters of the National Action Network. And we have 5 corporate offices, including our downtown corporate office, our headquarters, the House of Justice, as well as our Washington Bureau office, our office in Atlanta and in Miami. And we are gearing up for a fight. And we're glad you're here because you're going to help us to fight. And the fight's going to take place now up to the midterm election. It's a fight we can win. It's a fight we must win. It's a fight that can change the direction of our country. And so we're excited about this agenda. We started with the packed house in the main plenary hall on Wednesday morning and all the way through our Keepers of the Dream Award. The members of the board of directors here, will you please stand, of the board of directors of the National Action Network? Wonderful. Please stand, all the board members who are here, please. Thank you. So let us launch this important day. This luncheon is consistent with the National Action Network's commitment to the legacy of Martin Luther King and the role that the church must play in the cause of justice and freedom. The National Action Network considers itself the justice arm of many churches in this country. We cannot affect justice impact simply with our single congregation. It takes us coming together collectively to have the kind of force that can have impact on the social justice climate. And so for many of us, the National Action Network is the arm of our church's social justice agenda. And we're excited about yes, we're excited about that. So we are deeply committed to the church. We're deeply committed to the church, to the pastors, and the National Action Network could not do what it is. We're going to do some exciting things in the area of economics coming up very soon, and some other things that are the result of our having such a tremendous network of pastors and churches. There are over 4,000 churches and pastors registered with the National Action Network, and we're building that network every day to be larger so it can have greater impact. And so having done that, let me invite us to a word of prayer as we begin this day. Gracious God, our Mother and our Father, we thank you that you've called us from the darkness into the light, and in that light, our hope for justice has been ignited. We've tasted justice before, and our appetite cannot be satisfied with any less than full justice and opportunity in this nation. And so we ask that you would enable our struggle, enable the leadership of Reverend Sharpton as he gives voice and presence to this agenda of fulfilling the mandates of Martin Luther King Jr. and others who have died and given their lives before us. Make us now, God, available to be instruments in your hand, that the fight for freedom may become our fight, and the cause of justice may become our cause. In your name we pray, amen. Amen. I'm happy now to present the founder and organizer, the one who conceptualized the National Action Network, who bore it when there was nothing. And today you can testify to the impact, presence, and power that the Reverend Al Sharpton has brought to the cause of justice. Let me welcome the president of the National Action Network, Reverend Al Sharpton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to all of you that have gathered for the National Action Network Convention, our board, and our honored guests. It has been by far the most well-attended and the most dynamic convention in our 27 years of having a network, and I want to thank the person responsible for this attendance and for this mobilization, who has organized this convention in great numbers, our organizer, Donald Trump. He has mobilized us like we've never been mobilized before. The issue is going to be what we do with the mobilization. It's not enough to get everybody up if we can't get everybody out. You can have, as ministers know, you can have a full house, but you haven't really made the point if nobody joins the church. There are 3,000 people in the seat and nobody come down the aisle. They've been entertained, not converted. So we've got to find and deal with how, in a very delicate way, how we are going to transform a lot of this traction into real applied action. That's why we named it the National Action Network. I want to say this is the William A. Jones Jr. Memorial Luncheon we do every year. Dr. Jones was my pastor and was the head of Greater New York SCLC Operation Breadbasket. And as long as there is a National Action Network, we will always hold his name. His family's here. Jenny, stand up. His daughter. And Jenny wrote a book about her experience, her battle, many of you know, with cancer. And she wrote a book called Consider It Pure Joy. And we put it at your seats as a gift from us. But I hope you will, in your congregations, tell people to buy Jenny Jones Austin's book. That's her husband sitting next to her. They're not dating, they married now. Got children. Before I bring on speakers, want you to look at the screens.
Hey everybody, I wish I could be there with all of you again at the National Action Network, and I am grateful to Reverend Sharpton and all of you for letting me say a few words. We've been properly remembering Dr. King this month, this preacher with no official rank or title who somehow gave voice to our deepest dreams and our most lasting ideals. This leader who stirred our national conscience and helped make our union more perfect. This American who reminded us that people who love their country can change it. The steady flame of courage he left behind would sustain generations of marchers through the campaigns to come, through boycotts and voter registration drives, through movements for economic and social justice. His example inspired generations of Americans to never be trapped by what is, but to always push for what ought to be. That's what you all are doing at the National Action Network, fighting to ensure equal access to jobs, to justice, to education, and to the ballot, especially when it's hard, especially when confronted with resistance or hostility, or the inertia of a stubborn status quo. So thank you for taking up this generational campaign to keep Dr. King's flame alive. A campaign of citizens who believe that America is a constant work in progress and that together we can always change it for the better. Thanks, everybody, and God bless all of you. Bye-bye.
Former President Barack Obama. All right, thank you. Let me say, we started Wednesday where we had two governors, the governor of New Jersey and the governor of New York here. Governor of New York announced that he is signing an executive order restoring the right to vote for parolees in the state. I see our Senator Cousins stand up, Andre. We've now united the Democratic Party, and y'all have got the governor with Holy Ghost now, where we should take the Senate and make more reforms. We had announced earlier this week, with the guidance of our chairman, our work with Comcast and AT&T in the areas of using pension fund investments, financial managers. Robert Smith, the billionaire who spoke at our dinner the night before last, and is one that is going to be part of that. We also have seen, we're on our way to deal with this, with Mark Morial and us, with the Starbucks company. We don't want just an afternoon of training and symbolism without dealing with across the board with how we do business. One of the distortions that I think that we have to deal with is Dr. King in his last years raised the issue of economics, but it's been distorted, Dr. Richardson. He had two campaigns, and I straightened this morning. We had Kamala Harris just spoke, Bernie Sanders spoke, and Elizabeth Warren spoke early this morning. He had the Poor People's Campaign to deal with social policy and to deal with how we were dealing with the impoverished. And he had Operation Breadbasket to hold major corporations accountable. A lot of people will go on the poor people's side, but won't go on confronting the corporate America side. Because it's, you know, we'll go and isn't it nice to stand up for poor people? But it's a little more confrontational to say that y'all are taking all this money out of our community, not banking in our banks, taking our pension funds, giving it to all white money managers. They're giving it to developers who are then gentrifying our community. So inadvertently, grandma is paying for the removal of her own house from her own neighborhood. That's a little deeper than sympathy. So all of the white liberals in the white church sympathize with poor folk, but in their congregation are the money managers that are cutting us out. I'm a breadbasket baby. You know, you watch, they're gonna have folk run around here in overalls and bibs. So, oh, we poor. Yeah, but I also want some cut us in or cut it out. That's why I grew up with Reverend Jackson. So there got to be two things to this. Don't feel sorry for me. Give us some contracts. Give us some of our pension funds. Don't give me an afternoon of feeling good Starbucks for a $5 cup of coffee. So we're going to deal with all of this coming out of this convention. One of the reasons that we've had the presidential candidates come through is because we wanted to have them address the specifics that we deal with in our community. Now, none of them have announced. And they're on what we call a temperature tour. They're trying to test the temperature to see if they should announce. Every one of them is telling you, I have not announced yet. I've done announced some of them. We got a couple today who really have not announced. Kirsten Gillibrand has not announced. Cory Booker wouldn't dare announce. I'm talking his pastor. But we let everybody say where the country ought to be and deal specifically with the interests in our community. Now they will call it race baiting. It is not race baiting. We're not dividing the country is divided. And if you don't address the divide, you're adding to the divide. And I want to give a hand, come on up here, Derek, the president of the NAACP is joining us. We all fighting together. And I'm honored that he came to be with us. NAACP and Urban League, man, all of us working. Come on, and you can sit in my seat. I don't eat no house, so you might as well eat. That's right, I'm fat. Yeah. So I think that if we can all come together and work together on an agenda that we don't apologize for, and that we know that is going to service our people, that is our task. Is that not right? So I want us to hear from the Senator Gillibrand and Cory Booker, and then we're going to eat. I got Congressman Al Green here, Congresswoman Pelosi's in the building, and then we are honoring those that are the reason that we can't even do any of this. Don't you ever forget that you didn't get here by yourself. Don't ever forget whatever you've achieved is because people fought for it and put their lives on the line. And we wanted everybody in the 50th anniversary is up there, but folks that really were involved 50 years ago and kept it going. Dr. King's movement and legacy would have died had it not been for those that took the pain and the risk to keep going. And that's what this luncheon is about. And the level of ministers. I had communion last night with Bishop Rudy McKissick. Why y'all laughing when I say we had communion? It wasn't alcoholic. We don't drink alcohol. Now we may puff a peace pipe, but we don't drink. That's to bring peace. And we were talking about the next generation of ministers that need to keep fighting for social justice, keep fighting for civil and human rights. Johnny McCann, we don't see enough of them. I'm proud of Reverend Toulis and Charles Williams and others in name, but we got to get more of y'all into preaching for the people that you pastor. We have to get more of y'all into dealing with the social issues of your time. Jesus did not save you to go to heaven. He saved you to do some work on earth to get to heaven. Some of y'all are so heavenly bound, you know earthly good. So we really want to challenge that. And we really want you to be involved. I got involved. My mother brought me to Reverend Jones, Reverend Jackson when I was 12. And I became youth director 13 years old. Reverend King, Dr. King was killed that year. And I often say, I was in the Church of God in Christ, and I often say, Zanona, if it hadn't been for Jesse, I'd have been T.D. Jakes. He took my spot. I was raised to do that. But next thing I know, I was going to jail on Lexington Avenue at AFP. And the rest was history. He denies me, but it's his fault. Call everybody name but mine, but it's his fault. He turned I was on my way to Rolls Royce and private jet and all that. That's what happened, Cory. Let us now hear from the senator from New York. And I must say, I always tell this story, but you need to know, she has a unique position in National Action Network history. David Patterson, who was governor at the time, had to fill the seat held by Senator Hillary Clinton. He called me and asked me to take Caroline Kennedy to Sylvia's. Many of y'all remember had this big media thing. So I just knew he was going to point out to the Senate. Took her to Sylvia's, 100 cameras outside, come out. Then he called me that Tuesday and he said, I want you to have Saturday morning at the Saturday rally on the air, Congresswoman Gillibrand. I said, who is Congresswoman Gillibrand? He said, you'll know by Thursday. I said, all right, Governor, hold up the phone. Thursday, he announced the senator that will fill the seat by his appointment is Congresswoman Kirsten Gillibrand. So then I understood why she was speaking Saturday. The first appearance she made as the senator designee was at National Action Network Saturday morning. But it didn't stop there. She came in, we got up. We're gonna have 2 hours every Saturday morning. The second hour, I got up and got ready to speak. And then I said, I'm gonna bring on Senator Gillibrand, Senator-elect Gillibrand, and she's gonna speak. She spoke 10 minutes, and she said, Derek, she said, now take questions. I said, wait a minute, we don't do that here. You don't know my crowd. You don't know what kind of questions you like. And she said, no, she stood there an hour on air. Now, we done had everybody from Hillary Clinton to Barack Obama to Winnie Mandela said, she's the only one, including me, that takes questions on Saturday morning. So she's an authentic NAN member. Senator from New York, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand.
kind introduction, but his years of friendship, guidance, wisdom, always welcoming me to the House of Justice, and always being a fighter who truly does speak truth to power. I also want to thank our chairman, Reverend Dr. W. Franklin Richardson, and everyone here at NAN. It's always an honor to speak to you. I also want to recognize my colleague, Cory Booker, in the Senate. We are very good friends, and we go to Bible study on Thursdays. We have the Chaplain Black give us really good counsel once a week. But he's a wonderful partner to work with in the Senate, and I just want to give you all the blessings in the world, and thank you for being here. Thank you. So as the Reverend started, and as in our prayer and opening, these are very, very difficult times. And I believe fundamentally in right versus wrong. And I believe that wrong is actually winning. I also believe that the role of government is to work for the people as a force for good against what is bad. But what have we seen from this White House? It's very sad to say President Trump has spewed hate and division into society and fed this country's worst demons over our better angels when he talks about walls, when he talks about racist moral equivalencies. This president is what the darkness that Reverend spoke of. He is what the darkness looks like. He is what the darkness sounds like. It degrades our country, it debases our values, and it harms our souls. But as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, and I believe deeply to my core, only light can drive out darkness, and only love can destroy hate. So where does that leave all of us? I believe that each of us here, every person on this planet, is called by God to make a difference in the world. Just as Queen Esther was in the Bible when she was called to save the Jews, to risk her life to help others, we are also called to fight for what's right. What makes America great is when we care about one another. It's when we care about them enough to treat them the way we want to be treated. But what makes our country extraordinary is when we care about others more than ourselves. That's why our Declaration of Independence rests on the fundamental truth that we are all created equal. It guaranteed life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for all citizens. But we also know that many people were left out of our founding documents. African Americans, women, immigrants, and each generation since then has fought to create a more perfect union that protects all of us as equals. As your senator and as a public servant, my job is to elevate the voices that are not being heard to fundamentally realize that promise. So it is painful to know that more than 250 years after the abolition of slavery, 64 years after Brown v. Board of Education, 55 years after Martin Luther King Jr. shared his dream, 54 years after the Civil Rights Act, 9 years after the first black man to be elected as the President of the United States, and a week after 2 black men were arrested for sitting in Starbucks. The truth is, institutional and systemic racism are still alive and well. And it is exacerbated by daily individual racism. It continues to permeate every aspect of our lives, from criminal justice to education to healthcare to jobs. As long as one person, one vote doesn't exist at the ballot box, if you're a felon, if the line was too long, if you don't have the right ID, as long as we perpetuate a system of mass incarceration because the failed drug war is disproportionately locking up people of color, as long as a black woman continues to be paid 63 cents for every dollar earned that a white man earns, Dr. King's dream will remain just that. When racism wins, when hatred wins, when bigotry wins, everyone loses. We cannot deny this reality, and we cannot move forward until we have an honest conversation about where we go next. We must be speaking truth to power about these facts. And as a Democrat, I want to tell my party in the most absolute terms, we should not court that hate for our own electoral survival, but we must shine a light on it for our moral survival. 2 weeks ago in Memphis, on the anniversary of Dr. King's assassination, American hero and national icon and our friend here in Congress, John Lewis, said it best. When you see something that is not right, you have a moral obligation to say something, to do something. You cannot be quiet. So that is a call to action for every leader to recommit to King's radical revolution of values. The idea that regardless of race, religion, cultural identity, or anything else, an injustice against one of us is an injustice against all of us. And that is a true statement. When we let hatred and discrimination fester, when we remain silent when blacks are attacked, or the working class, or immigrants, or women, or Muslims, or Jewish people, or LGBTQ community members, it degrades our communities. It degrades basic humanity. And it slowly closes and hardens our hearts towards suffering. When our hearts are hardened, we cease to see suffering, and the golden rule is broken. That is when everyone loses. So we must fight back. And this fight must not be the burden of black and brown people alone. Black Americans did not create systemic racism in our country. So why are they so often called to be the only ones to end it? White leaders, especially white leaders like myself in Congress, must take ownership of this cause too and recommit to being brothers and sisters in this fight for equality and justice. And while we all know that the moral arc of the universe does bend towards justice, we also know this doesn't happen on its own. That's why we have to make it happen with both our hands, with all our strength, and with all our will. For guidance, when I think about fighting something so evil and so powerful, my faith is what grounds me. As a Christian, I look at Scripture as my how-to manual. So look at the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus commands his followers to be the light of the world. To be that light, we must, through humility and gratitude, serve others first, especially the least among us. Light can also expose and defeat the darkness. The Bible says, have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of the darkness, but rather expose them. Anyone who claims to be in the light but hates a brother and a sister is still in the darkness. The light shines into the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. So I also look at history for role models, and I looked most recently at the suffrage movement, because we will soon celebrate 100 years of suffrage. Whether it's Sojourner Truth or Ida B. Wells or Mary Church Terrell, who along with Ida and others founded the NAACP and served as the first president of the National Association of Colored Women, I look at the women of the Civil Rights era who never stopped trying to realize a dream of civil and human rights. Whether it's Linda Brown or Rosa Parks or Fannie Lou Hamer or Dorothy Height or Shirley Chisholm. And of course, I look at our modern day heroes and role models who speak truth to power every day. Whether we're talking about Hazel Dukes or the late Erica Gardner or Tarana Burke or my friend Jennifer Jones Austin sitting right here in the audience. I could go on about the women whose collective footsteps we walk in, but I'd like to highlight one today, and it's Coretta Scott King. Just 4 days after her husband was assassinated, she continued to lead the march of striking sanitation workers in Memphis. Just 8 days later, that union prevailed. And she didn't stop there. She kept going. She and and her husband both knew that true social justice was impossible without economic justice. Coretta refused to accept the concept that full employment, a job for everyone, was impossible. She spent years fighting for legislation, even testified in front of Congress to ensure jobs and good pay are available to everyone. I agree with Coretta, and as a New York Senator, I pledge to keep her fight for full employment. Because everyone has a right to a job that pays fairly and gives them opportunity to realize the American dream. That's how we achieve economic justice in this country. And as Coretta said then, our great nation has the resources, but does it have the will? My answer is pretty simple: it better. If this country can spend $1.5 trillion to give corporations that ship jobs overseas and the wealthiest among us a massive tax break, why can't we guarantee that anyone who's willing to work can get a job in this country that benefits everyone? Corporate interests, rife with political soft corruption, have controlled the agenda in Washington for decades. So we simply can't tinker around the margins and expect to somehow rebuild the middle class and stamp out inequality. We need real action, and that comes from bold ideas. So here is one. To reach full employment, let's create a universal jobs program, one where anyone who wants a job can have one. Essentially, it would be a public option, offering good jobs with living wages and benefits for any American struggling to find one. The federal government could invest in communities to create the opportunity for job training in sectors that improve our lives, whether it's infrastructure, education, or healthcare. That is worth fighting for. Such a program could put to work in meaningful jobs that rebuild and strengthen our communities while learning skills for a successful life. That is exactly the role that government should have, to create a floor for wages and benefits and shift power back to workers. So I think it's time to fully embrace Dr. King's legacy, Coretta Scott King's vision, and eradicate joblessness and working poverty. So let's keep marching towards progress. Let's keep bending that moral arc. I know that we can do this. We will make this country better, stronger, and fairer. Thank you all for this opportunity.
Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. Before we bring on Senator Booker, I'm going to, I know he has a plane to catch, I want just to have a greeting from the president, national president of the NAACP, Brother Derek Johnson.
Thank you, Reverend Sharpton and Reverend Richardson, for allowing me this brief opportunity. I'm from Jackson, Mississippi, and I put on my new suit to come to the big city. And I didn't know my Uncle Danny was going to be on stage, but it's good to see you. You know, I came on a red eye last night from San Francisco to serve on a panel here. On my way back to a meeting in Atlanta so I can be back home in the morning to go to my daughter's recital. But it's important for me to come here, as I see my friend Melody Campbell in the back, because in this political landscape, we must understand that social justice is not a competition. It's an opportunity for all of us to stand up together to understand that there's no time for a policy debate because we're in a power war. Growing up in Detroit and moving to Mississippi, I had a great aunt who was like my grandmother. And I would sit under her and she used to have this box next to her. And she would take this white stuff I thought was candy at the time and put some in her mouth and then put some in my mouth. And I learned later on that she had the name brand box of candy called Argo Starch. Reverend Sharpton, I thought I was in New York City because you have some country folks in this room right now who know about starch. And I didn't understand why would we be eating starch? And there was a time when black folks folks in the South, especially during the lean months, there was not enough to eat. And they would eat starch because starch will have a chemical reaction that makes you feel full by expanding in your stomach, although you'll be starving to death. And sometimes for some families, they will go months on end eating starch as a supplement, and yet they were starving to death. 50 years ago, Martin Luther King went to Memphis to support sanitation workers so they can have the right to collectively bargain. In 2008, we elected the first black president this country had ever seen. In fact, some of y'all say hell will freeze over before a black man get elected to the White House. And we stand here in 2008 realizing we ate starch and we're still starving to death. An election is not what power is built on. Power is built on a movement. And that movement must be sustained so we don't have the ebbs and flows of the transaction of the election cycle. And movements cannot be sustained by one organization alone. It must be a collective effort as we leverage our collective power. So I support the National Action Network. I support the National Coalition for Black Participation. I support Senator Cory Booker. I support the Rainbow Push Coalition because I support our community. So thank you for this brief opportunity, because I know most of y'all, when I walk up, say, who is this fella claiming to be the head of the NAACP? I'm just a fellow who lived in Jackson, Mississippi. They allow us an opportunity to get out the state every so often. But I have been groomed to understand the difference between protest and power. And power is what we need to pursue, because protest is fleeting, and we cannot get power if we don't do it together. Take care. Thank you for the opportunity.
In order to properly bring on our senator, and Derek, I want you to know that it broke. We were told yesterday that the civil rights prosecutors have recommended indictment on Eric Garner's case. Now it's up to Sessions, so we all may be headed to Washington to deal with that. But it looks like the people that worked the case won't get indicted. They need Rosenstein and Sessions to sign off on it, so they went public. So all of us that work Eric Garner is clearly going to stay on top of this. That's what they texted. I think it's appropriate that Senator Cory Booker, who we all know and love, be introduced by his pastor, who's a member of our board and is a major factor in what we do. Many of you know that under his leadership, and Reverend Stephen Bartlett, is Reverend Bartlett in the house? Reverend Stephen Bartlett started our NAN Tech World. And he has a huge, it's how many, 30,000 square foot tech center in Newark. They're now opening in other cities. And we just launched a couple of weeks ago, you see on the video, you there at the dinner the other night, we started our NAN Tech Mobiles, where we take the buses out. All of this with the vision of Dr. David Jefferson, who pastors the Metropolitan Mega Baptist Church in Newark. And he is the pastor. And I went to dinner with him in Coretta the other week, and Reverend Jefferson said, Cory actually pays his tax. not just one of those members in name, but he's members for real. A lot of y'all know we got name members, and then you got real members. He's a real member. So to present Cory Booker, our speaker, and so y'all that are going to eat quietly, don't smack your lips where we can hear. But we didn't want y'all. Senator Booker said, no, let them eat. He's a vegan. I'm vegetarian, we don't eat this stuff. I took Reverend Jackson, Miss Clayton, to eat, and he said, I'm a vegan too, give me some vegan fried chickens and some pork. Let us hear Reverend David S. Jefferson.
Good afternoon, everyone. You cannot clap because I know the fork is going up to your mouth. First of all, I want to thank Reverend Sharpton and the fine work that he's doing. The legacy of man and what Reverend Sharpton is doing deserves not only recognition, but I think we all ought to be grateful that in a time such as this, we have the National Action Network that is doing the work that it is doing in this country. I don't really stand to introduce a ton of members, especially those that are not tithing. But I am grateful to introduce one that is a tither. Senator Booker epitomizes what Reverend Sharpton was saying a few moments ago, as he jokingly mentioned that he was on his way to the big house, the Rolls Royce, the private jet, and he was hijacked by Reverend Jesse Jackson. And as a result of that, engaged in what he's doing now, along, with Dr. Bill Jones. But let me say that for at least 22 years now, I have known Senator Cory Booker. I have personally witnessed his conviction to his faith. But more importantly, I have witnessed his commitment and his dedication to the community. He has cut his teeth in one of the most challenging urban cities in the United States of America. He's been in the front alley, the back alley, Main Street, and every street you can think of. Blooded but not bowed. And still strong enough to hold his head up and say that I still believe that there is a God somewhere that can give me strength to help change and transform the communities that I am so dedicated to. And he's not only said that with respect to Newark, but he has a conviction for the country at large. He could have, coming out of Yale, he could have, after being a Rhodes Scholar, he could have chosen a path of the private jet. He could have chosen a path of Wall Street and a lot of money. But he did not choose that path because his God-given calling was not in that direction. He is, beyond a doubt, happy with what he's doing, sometimes a little bit frustrated, but he's doing it because he has a calling to do it, and it's not just a job. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am humble, grateful, and pleased to introduce a young man that I have perhaps been mentoring now for 20 years, who has, beyond a doubt, served his community and here today to share with you. Put your hands together. Let's welcome Senator Cory Booker.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I am so grateful to be here, but more importantly, I am grateful to be here at a lunch for faith leaders. Now, I have to first and foremost give my respect to Reverend Al Sharpton, who's been in my life for some time now. And what I love about him is he understands things that